Welcome back to the Laugh Track Podcast. I'm Brandon Michael Max, and my guest today is...
Vannessa Jackson.
So, I was waiting for you to start recording. I am you have no idea how excited I am.
Yay.
I'm going to be completely honest. I'm so happy you're on.
Oh, I'm stoked.
I was holding back that, since you walked in.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And then I was also waiting to tell you this story.
Ooh, okay.
So, my first time doing stand-up was at Punchline.
Okay.
And it was sort of an accident.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And I was going to see a comedian.
Uh-huh.
It was Michael Che.
Oh, yeah.
So he was doing stand-up, and he's talking to my dad and I. And then I was 15.
Uh-huh.
He brought me on stage and told me to do a 5-minute set.
Oh, that's crazy.
And there is a video of this because no one would believe me if I didn't have that.
Yeah. It was his headlining show, though?
It was his show.
Oh, that's so interesting.
And then just talking to my dad and I, he's like, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" I never thought about that.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, "I'll be a comedian." He's like, "All right, tell some jokes or whatever." So at 15,
Yeah.
I was doing that.
That's crazy. How'd it go?
Probably my best set, to this day.
Oh, really? That's
probably.
so funny. Everybody was just like, we'll encourage him. That's awesome.
Exactly. That's where I peaked.
That's so funny.
But now, how did you get your start into stand-up?
That's a really great question. I think it's, I guess, my start in comedy in general, which is I was living out in LA after college and was trying to do the whole hosting grind. So I wanted to be next Ryan Seacrest, Juliana Rancic vibes. Mm-hmm. And so I started taking hosting classes at just different places around LA. But there's one school in particular that I was taking classes at, and the teacher who was doing one of the different sections, he had I really think he had nothing planned for the class. Okay. And so he basically just was oh, everybody today is going to go up and do 5 minutes of just keeping the class entertained, which was crazy. Mm-hmm. And so I went second to last because I was terrified and did a really great job. And he goes, "Oh, well, it doesn't count. You're as a stand-up." And I go, "I don't know what you're talking about." And he was like, "Oh, but you do stand-up." And I go, "I'd never done stand-up." And he was like, "Okay." Yeah. And so that, and then combined with another one of the girls in the class was always telling me "Oh, you're really funny. You should try comedy." And so I was like, "All right, let me give this a go." So I started simultaneously doing stand-up and sketch. I was doing stuff at UCB Hollywood and then Second City Hollywood, and then also was doing stand-up. I started with taking a class called Pretty Funny Women with this comic named Lisa Sunstead, which was really cool. So it was just all women, which helped a lot, I think, just to learn in a safe place. Everybody's so torn about comedy classes.
Yeah.
I'm I had no concept of what stand-up was or an open mic or anything like that. Mm-hmm. So for me, it was great.
So when starting out doing those classes and everything, what is that one piece of information that stuck with you to this day?
See, here's where I do agree with some people about comedy classes, which is I don't necessarily know that comedy classes teach you how to be funny so much as they teach you I think for me, it just gave me the confidence to go oh, I can do this. And I do have something. And here's where I go to find open mics. And here's where how you just get involved in the comedy scene. So I don't know if there's any tangible information I learned from the class about doing comedy. It more was just for me, I needed to dip my toe in it and then be oh, okay, I actually love this. I'm obsessed with it.
So growing up, were you considered funny? Were you cracking jokes in class or?
I was not. Everybody always wants to. I was not the class clown type at all. Were you class clown type?
I mean, yeah.
Yeah. That's so fun. A lot. I feel it's half and half of comics. Either it's the class clown type or it's very introverted type, and there's no in between. And I was much more, and still am the introverted type. A lot more reserved to myself. I think I came from a very funny family. So with my family and things like that, we're always cracking jokes and things. But yeah, I definitely wasn't. If you ask anybody from my elementary school, they're not Vannessa, of course she's the comedian. It's crazy.
Now, when did you take those comedy classes? How old were you?
Oh, well, I started comedy when I was 24, maybe early 25.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in that time, what do you think is the biggest difference between comedy then and even earlier on than now? Is it the presence of social media? Is it, some people say you can't say certain things now? What is your opinion on the difference of like stand-up now.
Yeah, how it's changed. I think social media has like really flipped it on its head for a couple different reasons. I think the craft of stand-up comedy has always and will always be the same. Like you just can't beat stage time. It's like it doesn't matter if you have a huge following or no. Like if you're not constantly on stage, you just can't get good at this thing. Now, you can get a following and headline and do hours, but like to be really good at you can't beat like just writing every day, getting on stage every day, like doing it day in and day out. But for the business model of it, yeah, social media has changed it. I mean, they used to do a thing where you can go on the road and start headlining like little rooms and once you get like good, but I think a lot of clubs now are like, oh, well, if somebody has like a huge following, we'll just put them in the room. So it's like good and bad. It's one of those things where I personally don't like to gripe about the whole social media of it all because I'm like, it just is the game. So it's like you either have to hop on board or like do something else with your life. But like, yeah, it's inevitable. You can't. The thing that has changed is when I first started stand up, a lot of older comics and stuff were like, don't post your material, don't burn your material, like just get good. And I think that sentiment has changed a little bit. I still hear comics be like, and I still think you shouldn't post a lot of stuff like early on. Like I've seen people post stuff from like open mics, which I think is just a little bit of like, might come back to bite you. But then again, I don't know, because some people do that and then get like 100,000 followers. So who knows, you know? And also like, if you do want a headline eventually, I do think it's important to start trying to build a following as early as possible now, for sure.
And then going off the social media thing, you know, I feel that like there was sort of like a pendulum where when stand-up sort of blew up again, like when I was on like TikTok or so.
Yeah,
And it was a lot of like crowd work.
Yes.
And I think it was like Matt Rife, you know, people wanted to go see his show.
Yeah.
And when they saw his written material, it just wasn't what they had seen online. So do you think that like posting, because I think we can agree a lot of comedians post crowd work and those improvised moments. Do you think that sort of hinders when they come to see a live show, seeing that maybe that's a section of the show, but it's not the whole thing most of the time?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm always very torn about this. As somebody who does not have a following, I think it's very fascinating because I'm like, what you do is what you do. And I think more so now you can't, I don't know, I'm always the person of like, oh, you don't want to do like get the wrong audience or the wrong people. So I think that was a little bit of his issue at first, which he's talked about a lot, which was like, you know, the crowd work and the things he posted online kind of like got him like a big female base. And that's not really the material that he's doing really, is like, he's a man and a straight man talking about like straight man things. And so I feel like there was a little bit of like cognitive dissonance with that. But yeah, I don't know. It is a weird thing because I do have a lot of friends who have gone very viral doing like a lot of crowd work, but then you show up to their shows and it's a lot of yelling out and a lot of trying to tame the audience. And I think it just
doesn't entice the audience.
I think it just depends on like what your type of comedy is. Like some people really just love doing crowd work. I think Matt Rife is one of those people. So it's like probably not that big of an issue because he genuinely enjoys doing crowd work. But then there are some people who just got big on crowd work, but they want to do written material. And yeah, I don't know. It just depends.
Yeah, see, because like one of my favorite stand-ups is Jimmy Carr.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the thing is when he comes out, he's like, there will be a section where you all can yell out. He goes, but we're going to do some jokes and then we'll get to that part.
Yes, 100%.
And he's someone I feel balances that very well. And even in Matt Rife's like first special, you know, I found some of his humor funny. And to what you're saying, you know, he first blew up with having a female dominant audience.
Yeah.
And I found it odd that he kind of went against that so harshly in his first
special. But that's where my hot take is. I don't think he ever went against it. I think it's just that he built a fan base of people who were coming for something different, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, I think it just, that's the interesting thing with comedy that I always love talking about, which I think is very fascinating. You cannot choose who your fans are. Like, that's a very fascinating thing that I've noticed with, like, you think that your fans are going to be who you think your fans are, and sometimes they are not. And it's very interesting, where I'm like, I've actually followed Matt Rife's career for a bit, like before he even blew up online. And yeah, he has always been doing the type of material that he's doing. It's just that he went viral with like the red flags thing, which I think is something that women do talk a lot about, which I think is a big reason that his clips went for women is because we love talking about red flags.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think he necessarily went against his fan base. I think he just did what he always does, and people were like, "Wait a second, but what about the red flags?" And he was like, "That's just like," because that is the interesting thing about social media is like you are taking, as he's a touring comic who does hours, and he's taking like a minute, 2 minutes and distilling it into a great video for people. But it's like, if you go to watch somebody do an hour, it's like, that's always been what his hour was. He just spent, like you said, like 10 minutes doing like, okay, and then now we'll talk about red flags. That's a fascinating thing. But yeah, I think a lot of people came out very hard against him. And I'm like, I don't think he like, it wasn't like he was somebody who was doing very like female friendly comedy and then all of a sudden he was like, let me like get the man. It's like, this is what he was doing. It's just that that's not what you guys saw the little 20-second clips of, which is very fascinating.
Yeah. Also, Matt Rife's not good looking. That's my hot take.
Oh, you don't think he's good looking?
I don't get it. I get the appeal.
Okay.
Like, I don't know. He just looks too like chiseled. Like, I don't know. That makes
too
sense.
Pretty. I know exactly.
He's too pretty. Yeah, he's too pretty.
Fair. I'll take that criticism. Yes. And I'll pass it to him and I'll let him know.
Yeah, exactly. So now, when it comes to stand up, who is your Mount Rushmore of comedians? Like the best in the industry, top 4?
It's just always hard to like, this is also what I love about comedy is like there's so many different voices and so many different types of people that it's hard for me to ever like really nail it down.
Yeah.
One of my all-time favorites is Tig Notaro. She is so funny. Everything she does, I just will stop and watch. I just think she's hilarious. I love John Mulaney. I love his writing. I just think you can't really like top his writing. Aziz Ansari was like one of my early influences. I listened to all of his albums when I was like first starting comedy.
Yeah.
Could not get enough of them. Who else? I think Taylor Tomlinson's doing really, really great work right now.
I think you'd also mention Ali Wong.
Ali Wong, yeah, I love Ali Wong. She's great. Yeah, she's also one of the, where it's just like great writing. I really respect people who have really, really solid like written jokes. It's great.
So, well, I was going to say this earlier, but I guess I'll ask. So,
yeah.
You had the opportunity to write for John Mulaney.
Yes, yeah.
When he came back onto the show.
Yes.
Now, you did it how many times had you worked with him?
John Mulaney? This is, okay, and I just would like to express this. This is a disclaimer. Okay. I wrote for Saturday Night Live for 3 seasons, and when I first got there, somebody was like, oh, at a certain point, you're gonna like stop remembering who you wrote for or what. And I was like, that's crazy. These are hugely famous people. Yeah. I would never forget. And like somebody like 2 weeks ago told me I wrote something for Natasha Lyonne. And I was like, I've never worked with that woman. And I literally had to Google it. And I was like, I absolutely have worked with that woman. So John Mulaney, I remember the first time he came to the show because it was like huge and amazing. And I believe that I wrote for him 2 times. Okay. I want to say that's correct. I think he came back and hosted my 2nd season and my 3rd season. But if I am wrong, I want to, I know for sure, I remember the first time he came to the show because that was huge. And then he also was somebody who popped by a lot, just like on little cameos and things like that, because he was like a big friend of the show and like Lauren really loves him and respects him. So officially 2 times, I would like to say. I know I sound like a crazy person.
No, you're great. So now you saying that, now working on that show.
Yeah.
Do you have people who like pop in who just like aren't, like they're not looking to do like a cameo, right? They're just popping by saying hi, or is it they pop by and someone's like, hey, if you hang out Saturday night, we'll write you in?
Oh, no, they'll pop by for like the show on Saturday, or like people will call people up. Like a lot of times they'll be like, oh, it would be really cool if we had a cameo for John Hamm, and they'll like call John Hamm up. But no, he's not just walking into 30 Rock, just like being around the offices. That would be deeply concerning.
They would just come
that would be actually insane. No. Usually it'll be like if somebody's like around for the show on Saturday night, or if they call them up earlier in the week and they're like, hey, we'd love for you to do a cameo or something like that. And he's just somebody who people call up a lot because he just is really good at writing and around New York a lot.
So was it interesting being face to face with someone who you had looked up to their writing and being like, I'm writing for you.
Yeah, it really was. And it's one of those things, they always say don't meet your heroes, but like sometimes, especially in comedy, I feel like stand-up comedians, we're so used to just like chilling in green rooms and just like not having airs about us that it's really, really cool to work with like stand-up heroes that you've respected for a long time. So like we would pitch stuff in the offices to like the different hosts that come, and he came into my office with me and my office mate, and we were like pitching him an idea, and then he just kind of sat afterwards and was like, yeah, so how do you guys like writing for the show, and what's it been like, and was like really just like really great about like what it's like writing for the show, which is cool. I also forgot to say Nate Bargatze is one of my comedic influences, and he also was the same way, just like very chill. You're like, how is this? This is insane.
So is it? And then I'll get back to the written question.
Yeah,
then we'll go back to this.
For sure.
Is it different writing for someone who knows the show than like maybe a first timer host? Like writing for like a Mulaney or a Pete Davidson, is it different from writing for like a Simu Liu, who had never hosted the show before?
Yeah, it really depends. Everybody has their own like vibe. Like sometimes people come back and they're like, maybe it's their first time hosting and they're very stressed about like, you know, I got to make this count. Or sometimes you get like method actors and people who are like really serious dramatic actors who have a very different take on like sketch comedy and what it is. And then sometimes you have like huge actors who are just like, yeah, I'm just chilling.
This is
whatever.
no stress.
Yeah, so it really varies just person to person and like their take on it and how they feel about the show and what they think it's going to do for them. Yeah, it just kind of depends.
So when you have like, let's say like a Simu Liu.
Yeah.
Who I imagine when he was doing the show was probably promoting like Shang-Chi, or, you know, is it everyone goes to like what is they're promoting or like their big movie to either parody or have them do, or is it just you're just thinking of a sketch? Does that make sense?
You know, what do you mean?
So like if you had like we'll say like Chris Hemsworth come to host. Does everyone think I have to write a Thor sketch, or is it just you're writing? You just gotta think of a sketch that he would fit in.
Got it. You just gotta think of a sketch that he would fit in. If you have I think that's the best part about working at SNL is there's really a lot of times people think we have like edicts of like you have to write these things, you have to like, they're very much so like they want things to be like topical, and like if there's something that they need covered or that the host wants, that's a big thing. But really truly they're just like whatever you want to write, whatever you're interested in, just like do whatever feels right for you. But yeah, it's like if you have a Thor idea, write a Thor idea, but if you're not like,
it's not like a mandatory one.
No, yeah, they'll never like sit down and be like, we must write this about their big, and sometimes a lot of times they don't want to do their like biggest character or whatever. There's always a joke because like people who are classically like heartthrobs always come and they're like, don't write me hot, and then by the end of the week they're like they only want to do the hot sketches. It's like, yeah, we know you're hot, we got it.
So now putting a pause on that, now one of your first things was Vapid Thoughts. Where did...
Which, shout out to you and research. I literally, it took me back a second. I was like, oh, yeah.
So where did the initial idea for that come?
Yeah, but bigger question, where did you find that?
I did a lot of research. You have no idea. I've been very excited for this.
That's great. Is it like deep on the internet?
So I pretty much went through, I'm gonna sound like a stalker.
No, I'm actually very fascinated. It's not even something I was trying to, this sounds like it's something I'm trying to bury. Like it's gonna be like dark tweets. I'm like, okay, so I would like to apologize. Yeah, how?
So it was pretty much just first doing just a basic Google search.
Yeah.
And then going to websites, IMDb's, and then for probably a good week straight, listened to any podcast you were on.
Oh, wow. Sorry
any
about
interview
it.
Done.
Yeah, a lot. Very dark. Yeah.
And pretty much just went down like a little bit of a rabbit hole. So,
yeah. I love that.
I've watched like a lot of your stand-up just to like prep for this.
Yeah.
So,
okay. Yeah. Well, shout out to you. So Vapid Thoughts was a show I put on at Second City Hollywood. I think it was like a couple month run of it, which was really fun. And basically I had taken this class at Second City that was called like Late Night Your Name Here, which was literally a class where they teach you how to write, create your own late night show,
Mm-hmm.
and then you put on a stage show at Second City where people could come and watch you. And yeah, mine was just all about pop culture. I'm very big into pop culture, and I'm very big into like late night television shows.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to them. I think we're at the end, but I'm a big fan of that medium. And yeah, and so it was like, I think it was like I did fun quizzes where I like confused people about pop culture stuff and just did like a whole monologue. And yeah, it was really fun.
Yeah, you were talking a lot about The Bachelor,
Uh-huh.
Kanye, and then in my deep dive, I did find out that your main Jonas brother is Nick Jonas.
Yes,
which is
yeah.
the correct answer, by the way.
That's crazy.
I like Nick Jonas.
That is the correct answer. That's the only right answer. What are you with, Joe? That's insane. Kevin doesn't exist. Wait, was there a video of Vapid Thoughts online?
Yeah.
That's insane. Oh, wow. Okay. I'm going to have to look that up
they
later.
didn't run it by you before posting
Yeah,
it.
since you watched it, there's nothing cancelable in it, right?
Yeah, well, that's what I was kind of looking at as well. I was like, if I find something.
I know, because I don't, at this point, I just have accepted fate, which although, sorry, this is a random tangent, because everybody always worries about getting canceled. I'm like, I don't think there's anything, if anything, it would be like a bad opinion, but they pull things from people where it's like deeply racist, and they're like, but I was 15. I'm like, I've never been racist, though. I don't think there's anything you could find online of me that I'm like, oh, I really didn't like this specific group of people. I just find that fascinating.
Now, it's funny you mentioned that.
Yeah. You're like, well, actually, in 2011, I also got on every single social media platform so late. So I'm like, I don't think there's anything. But we'll find out today.
But you also worked for E! So you have a lot of
big into pop culture.
Yeah.
That was when I graduated college. That was the dream, was to be like entertainment host, entertainment writer, which I did. I worked for like E! News and for Bustle and BuzzFeed at a certain point, and all of those.
And what led all that to going to Late Nights Love Louisiana? Because that was a big stand-up cause. That was for, I believe, like a charity or a...
Yeah.
I think it was for hurricane relief.
Yes, it was. And I vaguely remember doing this. Do you know where it took place? Late Night Loves Louisiana? Because I obviously remember. I feel like I'm like, did I suffer a trauma? Let's go. The way my brain, that also has to do with Saturday Night Live. It feels like so much is jam-packed into it. I believe, though, Late Night Loves Louisiana was a thing that Greg Owinski put on. He's a writer who I met at Colbert. He's written for like Last Week Tonight. He's been just a great like comedy mentor for me. And I'm pretty sure he put that together, and I did a spot on that. Yeah.
Because you had mentioned Colbert, you were writing Apprentice for 4 years, right?
Yes, yeah, for season 4.
Season 4, okay.
Yeah, uh-huh.
So what's the difference between a writing apprentice and being a writer? Is Apprentice just you're in the room and you're kind of getting an idea? Was it
well, an Apprentice is an imaginary program that I think they've actually stopped doing.
Okay.
Because of me. Thank you very much. No, I'm just kidding. So basically what it was I was on, I think, the 3rd iteration of it. And what they essentially wanted was people who were interested. It was like a step above intern, where it was like you actually worked there, you got benefits. And basically they wanted people who came into Colbert and were like going from department to department to kind of see what they liked about working at a late night show. So you were supposed to spend some time with the social media. You're supposed to spend some time with producers. You're supposed to spend some time with talent. Okay. I got there and I said, I want to be with the writers. And then I refused to leave the writers, which is crazy. And when I say refused to leave, I mean, I didn't like grandstand or anything, but like, I just was like,
you made your mark.
Yeah. No, I just was like, I don't feel like rotating. And they were like, okay, nobody else wants to be with the writers. So cool. And I was like, beautiful. Because a lot of other people who did the program came to it because they wanted to be like producers, or they just kind of were like not sure about what they wanted to do. But I'm like, I'm a comedian. I want to be a comedy writer. So I'm just going to spend time with the writers, which they let me do. I got to do like, I got to write a bunch of stuff. I have like a reel of jokes that I wrote for Colbert. I got to like pitch jokes. I got to like work with them and work with the writer's assistants and like the showrunner's assistant. And like, yeah, pretty much it was just me sitting with the writers for 9 months, which is crazy.
Now, what is the biggest difference between like writing for those live shows like Colbert, SNL, and then you'd also done the HBO show?
Yeah, like Lady Sketch Show, yeah.
What's like the biggest, I imagine they have their own different deadlines and so like?
Yeah, I did a Black Lady sketch show, season 4, in between my first season and second season of SNL. So it was during the summer. It was a very short room. And yeah, you're writing a ton and then it goes on the TV like 6 months later or something. So I think that's the biggest difference is I had forgotten at that point what I had written for the show. And like, I even still to this day haven't watched some stuff. I had to like go look up something for something I was sending my manager recently. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I didn't even know they put that sketch on.
This is really funny.
Yeah, I'm like, that's great. Good for them. That's insane. Yeah, I think that was the biggest thing that was a job unlike any other. It was a lot of writing around the clock because we had a very short time span. I think we started that show. It was like literally I wrapped on my first season of SNL in May, started that show 2 weeks later, wrapped in September, and then went back to SNL. Like I literally had like a week in between. It was insane. But yeah, that was very round the clock, a little bit harder because you have to write evergreen stuff for a sketch show. So, and sketch is typically very topical. And so you really have to think about like literally like what are people going to be talking about in 6 months, which is a very difficult directive to have. But it was a lot of fun. Some of my best friends actually came from that writer's room, which is awesome.
So, well, I was going to say, it seems like writers, may stick together and, go on to be kind of either writing duos or so.
Yeah.
Is there anyone, because you have Jeff Wright who writes on Seth Meyers.
Yes, my bestie.
So did you meet him just in the halls of 30 Rock or was
Thank you for asking. I love this. No, I did not meet Jeff in the halls of 30 Rock, and since he's not here, he cannot refute the story. Okay. So how I met Jeffrey was at a Saturday Night Live after party my first year, and he was there with somebody else. I don't remember. And Jeff believes that he was not drinking. I believe that Jeff was under the influence of alcohol, but he has since said that he was not. And maybe he was just very giddy to be there. But basically, there was an actress. He's going to hate that I'm telling this story. There was an actress named Amanda Stenberg. Do you know her?
Okay, yes.
Yes. Very, very beautiful woman. And Jeff was interested in her, and his friends as a bit, because he was drinking, convinced him that she wasn't attractive. And so he came up to me to be like, is that girl in the corner attractive? And I was like, yeah, she's very beautiful. And then he did not trust me because he was like, I'm not sure what's going on right now, because he thought he was so drunk that they were telling him. It was a whole crazy thing. Yeah. And so then I messaged him the next day just to send him a picture and be like, you didn't shoot your shot with like the most gorgeous woman in the room. That's crazy. And he was like, fully do not remember this. And yeah, and then we've been friends ever since. That's probably the craziest story I have of anybody I've specifically become friends with.
So did he write on SNL or can like just...
No, he was just at an after party. I think he's friends with another writer there. Okay. Yeah, who invited him.
And then you guys did that, and then you guys started your podcast together.
Yeah. We literally, it was like, he was like, oh, let's like meet for coffee. We met for coffee. We were like, we have very similar ideologies, very similar, like, I think it's always nice to start a podcast with somebody who also has like things to lose. So we don't go too crazy and we really rein each other in, which is great. Yeah, and then we started our podcast maybe like 6 or 7, maybe like a year and a half later. We got a lot of business lunches. Me and Jeff love a business lunch. I really like to pick his brain about like agents, managers, like comedy business. And at one of our business lunches, we were like, we should start a podcast. And so we did.
That's usually how it always starts.
It's usually how it always begins. Yeah. You're like, are we so interesting? We should have a podcast. And then you do.
So now, does he still currently write for Seth Meyers?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so, is it interesting, Seth Meyers is obviously live audience and pre-taped. Is seeing his writing style or his writing schedule extremely different from what was a live show or like Colbert or so? Yeah.
This is going to make me sound extraordinarily vapid, a.k.a. Vapid Thoughts of Vannessa Jackson.
There you go.
I've literally never asked him about his job. I'm actually, now that you say it, I'm like, similar. We've literally never talked about it. I've never, not once. That's so funny. Never, not once have I asked that man about his job. I should ask him, hey, Jeff, how's the work going?
He's gonna be like, finally,
Yeah,
you've asked.
like not like the schedule of it. Like there's been a couple times where he's like, "Oh, I'm thinking about pitching this at work. What do you think? What are your thoughts?" But I've never like asked him about like how is the environment. Like, yeah, that's really funny. That's crazy. He's still my best friend.
Okay.
Wow, wild.
Now, talking about things you've written on, you were a writer
Yes.
on A Little Late with Lilly Singh.
A Little Late with Lilly Singh, my first writing job, yeah.
So that was your first writing job?
Yes.
Okay. Now, what was it like having that be your first writing job and then the reception of the show after it came out?
What do you mean the reception of the show? What are you talking about? It's a Hollywood classic. Everybody loved it. So that's very funny. So there was one season of the show, and then they completely rechanged it. And okay, let me put this perspective. Okay, so they had the first season of the show, which was live in studio in LA with a studio audience.
Okay.
Then the pandemic happened, and also they went through a whole creative change behind the scenes. So they got a whole new writing staff, whole new head writer, and I got brought on for the second season of the show.
Okay.
And so the second season of the show, completely different, partially because of COVID. So it was in a house in LA. The writer's room was all over Zoom, so I never had to leave New York. It was in a house in LA, and she really wanted to change things up and do things a lot different than she did the first season. So I actually think the second season was, I watched a little bit of the first season. And I actually liked it a lot. I think it's just, I don't know. This speaks to a bigger struggle in the comedy world right now and the late night world, which is like, I think the industry is a teensy bit behind on like what viewers want and what people are looking for. And also like they used to take people kind of from obscurity, right? Like you think of Conan O'Brien, who got his show when he was like 30 years old, an unknown, had a chance to like completely do this thing. The whole model, because of social media, has been like very flipped on its head, right? So like now they're kind of trying to get people who already have a big following and hoping that that following will like transition to like viewers on their platform. I, in my experiences with different jobs, have realized that that just isn't how things work. Like if you're a fan of somebody from Instagram, it's very rare that you would be interested in watching them in a movie, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And not that that's always the case, but I think the industry sometimes, I think what had happened with that show specifically is they thought like, oh, she's a huge YouTuber, a huge creator, we'll bring her to NBC and her fans will follow to NBC. Which instead, I think it's just like you're building an entirely new audience. I don't think people who are interested in like digital content are moving over to like linear to watch those kinds of things. So I think that was a big battle. I think she came from the world of like, I write, I produce, I do all of my own content. And a late night show is just completely different. It's you have a room of writers who are like learning your voice. You have like red tape from the network telling you what to do or what not to do, like what works, what doesn't work. So I think there was just kind of always that kind of battle between like, she was like, no, I know my voice and I know what works for me. And they were being like, no, but we are NBC and like we brought you here. And I don't think a lot of like industry people also value like how much like she was like a multimillionaire before she even got the NBC show. Almost at that point, it's kind of like a side hustle. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think they're used to people coming and being like, no, we just handed you the keys to the kingdom. And she's kind of like, no, I already have the kingdom. Like, let's do something different. Let's see. And so I think there was always that battle between like trying to make it more traditional late night, but also like a hybrid of YouTube content. So I don't know. I loved everybody in that room. That like the head writer was Chelsea Davison. Nimesh Patel was in that room, who's a hilarious stand-up. Natasha Vainblatt, like a lot of really, really funny comics that I got to know in that room. And again, some people that I really have stayed close with, which is awesome. But it's one of those things where you just kind of gotta like release it. You go, the check's still cleared and that is okay.
So going off of the, a YouTuber leaving like the social media bubble and like, NBC coming to them. One of the more recent kind of success stories from that is when Amazon picked up Mr. Beast's like game show.
Oh, okay.
So would you say that it's maybe smarter for a streaming service to reach out to, say, like a Lilly Singh's for maybe a sketch show or reaching out to, I feel so out of touch. I don't even know who the big YouTubers
Yeah.
are now.
Yeah, I know.
But instead of having them go to a huge network or so,
Yeah.
do you find it more beneficial if they go, whatever you do, we'll just give you more money to do that on a bigger scale?
Yeah. I don't know. That's a really great question. I have no idea. I think the thing is just like all of these things are very different, and you just have to learn. No matter what you're gonna do, you have to learn to be a master of that. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I think she was really, really great at YouTube and really, really great at that audience. And to go to late night too, I think by the end of our second season, she really had like picked it up and had a knack for it. But like, I think people look at all of these things as very like the same, and it's not so much. It's like when people take a lot of like influencers and then put them in movies, which can absolutely work.
Yeah.
But like what they're doing is very different than acting. You know what I mean? And I think that's the same for like, I've seen a lot of like reality TV stars now do stand up, and it's like, yeah, you can absolutely be a reality TV star and do stand up, but you just have to learn stand up, you know?
Yeah.
So like, I don't know. I'm not as familiar with like Mr. Beast and like his video game and his shows. So maybe possibly if it's like the same thing, but I don't know. It's just interesting. I've just found in my experience, people for some reason don't really transition with people from like digital to something else, if that makes any sense. But then again, it's like, we all love Denzel Washington. If he started a YouTube channel tomorrow, I don't know if I'd tune in. That would be crazy, right?
That would be great. That'd be a vlog on like the Gladiator 2 set.
You know
That'd be
what I mean?
awesome.
Like, I don't know. Yeah, it's interesting.
Well, you know, it's funny you mentioned that. I know, like, I think Brie Larson
Uh-huh.
has a YouTube channel where she just plays, like, Animal Crossing.
Oh, really?
Like,
That's so Brie Larson. I love that.
That thing is, like, I think there's one where she's playing, like, Tessa Thompson. I'm like, those
Yeah.
are Marvel superheroes.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes. That's so funny. That's okay. Well, good for them. Are a lot of people subscribing to it?
yeah, she has, like, a lot of subscribers. I'm not
Okay.
gonna
Well,
lie.
then there you go, Brie.
But
Nailed
I
it.
think she had a little following before starting the YouTube
Yeah.
channel. So
Okay. Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Now, obviously talking about, we touched on it a little earlier. When you first got the email that you had gotten SNL, what was first the process of, you know, were you doing stand-up? Did you go through the audition process? Like,
Yeah.
what was the beginning phase of that?
Thank you for saying email, because I would like to clarify for the listeners and the viewers and the fans, that's actually not how it usually happens.
Okay.
What had happened for me was I got all three of my first writing jobs, Colbert, Lilly Singh, and SNL, without any agents or managers, really just like word of mouth, people spreading the word about like my writing, and people nice enough to like give me recommendations and things. And SNL used to have open submissions, and I think along with writing for Lilly Singh and also having like an open submission, my writing was just really strong. So that is to say, usually people's agents and managers call them and they go like, "Oh my God, you got this thing, that's insane." I did not get that because I didn't have an agent or manager. So it literally was just like getting an email from the legal department being like, "Hey girl, here's your contract."
Congrats.
Like, yeah, nobody told me I had the job. It was just them being like, "Here's your contract for your first season." I'm like, that's insane. Yes. Sorry. What was your follow-up question to that? I went on my little tangents.
When you had gotten it, you know, was it something where you really couldn't, because that's kind of every stand-up stream. That's kind of like the...
Oh, 100%. So initially what had happened was I had submitted, they had done open submissions in July. So let me go back. So I got hired for Lilly Singh, which was my first official writing job in like, I want to say, dates escape me. I don't know. November of whatever year that was, maybe 2021.
2021.
And so then that got canceled in like May of 2022. And then I submitted for SNL in July of 2022. So from July to September, and also that was like my second or third time submitting to SNL. So at that point, it's just like, I always tell people, just send packets to anybody, anywhere, for any reason, like just whatever. And so, yeah, I had sent the packet in July, and then just like, you know, you just send things out into the world. You're still doing your thing, still doing stand-up, still doing like sketch stuff.
Yeah.
And then got an email that they wanted to interview me in like September. And so it was very late in the process. I knew they had already been announced like the first show of the season. And so I interviewed on a Tuesday, And I knew that the show, there was like a week after that, and it was like Thursday of the next week, and I knew that they would have to have writers come in on Monday because the show of the first season would have been on Saturday. So it was like Thursday the week before. I knew they had to have writers in by Monday, and I just was like, okay, cool, but I guess I couldn't get the job.
Yeah.
And then I got the email like late on Thursday that was like, okay, your start date is Monday, so, which is crazy. Which is good that I was in New York because there was a lot of people that season. That season they hired on the most writers they'd ever hired on since like 1995. There was 10 of us. 10 of us came on, 3 including the PDD boys.
So they started in your first season.
Yeah. We all started together, which is great. And so then I had to be there Monday, which is crazy.
So do you think it helped you that you were kind of not already in NBC's wheelhouse, but you had already been, under NBC's brand with Lilly Singh?
Oh, you mean to get hired on?
Yes.
No. I would love it. You know what's really funny? I don't know if I should tell the story, but I will. Nobody knew that show really existed. I knew somebody on the staff of Lilly Singh who went to go get COVID tested at NBC, and she told them that she was working for a Little Late with Lilly Singh, and they were like, "We don't know what that is." I mean, nobody was watching that show. Shout out to everybody who worked on it. I love them all, but like, no. Even when I say that show to this day, people are like, no, you're talking about.
So I'm going to be so honest for a second.
Yeah.
I don't send the questions to the guests before podcasts.
Yes.
Genuinely, that show is the reason I sent them, because I was like, I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Oh, yeah. No, I loved it. I had a blast on that show. I would like to say I had a blast, but I'm very aware that nobody...
I was like, I don't know what you can say.
No. Could you imagine if I was like, I don't want to talk about that?
I would have skipped right over. I'd be like, and next question.
No. I love talking about it. It was such an experience. I'm really, really glad that was my first writing job because it taught me so much. You learn very quickly.
When you're watching the show, like, is that something where, do you get excited, like, she starts reading, and you're like, I wrote that? Or is it just like,
Oh, yeah, on Lilly Singh?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, absolutely. It was the first time, like, I owe so much to that show. It was the first time I got hired as, like, an actual writer to write something. It was, like, very validating when you're, like, grinding and doing sketch and doing stand-up and doing all this to be like, okay, I actually have something, and, like, yeah, that was insane to just like watch your stuff being done and like to like fight for something. And I think that show is one of the shows where they had like the least amount of editing too. So it was a lot of like really truly like, this is my voice. And also just writing for a woman of color who's around my age, who like liked pop culture and like, yeah, that was one of those things where I was like, I am deeply proud of the work we did, but I do understand. From the outside looking in, I get that it is, it's so funny. I didn't get agents or managers until Saturday Night Live. So like, again, that tells you.
Okay.
Nobody was checking for this show. Nobody.
Now, I've always been kind of curious to this is, I would say, and correct me if I'm wrong, before SNL, you lived a pretty normal life. Or not normal, but, you had your writing jobs, and you would go and do stand-up and so.
Yeah.
Once getting hired at SNL, does that change? Because you had stated in one of the podcasts you had been on that you would get at the studio at 1 PM, and you're not leaving till 5 AM.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I haven't been there. The joke is you either stay at SNL for like 3 years or like 700 years. Like, really, truly, like, this is my first year not being there. And I loved it. It was so fun. It is very rough on your body, like very much so. Because the way it works is you are doing between October and May, you're doing 3 weeks on, 2 weeks off typically. So like you have 2 weeks of like break downtime, what they call hiatus, and then 3 weeks of like, it truly was around the clock. I joke with people like you either come in with a relationship or you stay single your whole time there because like it is very hard to coordinate like, hey, I can meet you maybe on Friday at 8 or I might not be off till like 2 a.m. So it's like, which so many people have talked about the schedule, but essentially Mondays you get there at like 4 PM. You work with people, you pitch, you think of ideas for the host. You have a big meeting with like Lauren and the hosts. And so you probably are leaving around 8 or 9 p.m. Tuesday, you get there at like 1 in the afternoon, and you literally, I didn't leave earlier than like 5:30 any night. Like, you're riding around the clock. Some people sleep in their offices. I never did. I lived in the Upper East Side. I was like, no, thank you. And then you're getting back, or you're getting up in the morning to like really make sure that things are like fleshed out before you send them in. They have to be due on noon on Wednesdays. And then Wednesdays, you're getting there at like 2 or 3 in the afternoon, usually 2, because table read happens at like 3 or 4. So you're there from like 2 in the afternoon to like 11 p.m. waiting for them to, like, you do the table read, you wait for them to pick what sketches are going to be in the show. And then if you have your sketch in the show, you have to go around from different departments. You have to talk to like, because writers also produce there. So you had to go talk to like hair, makeup. You had to go talk to stage design. You had to go talk to everybody to like tell them how you wanted it. So you're probably not going home. If you have a music video, which I did a couple music videos with them, you are there till like 1, 2 a.m. And then Thursdays, you're like punching things up. You're doing blocking. You're maybe doing things for like so you can be there anytime on Thursday from between like 12 in the afternoon to like 1, 2, 3 a.m. It doesn't matter. Friday, same deal. You're
We're just
like,
at Friday.
Yeah. We're just at Friday, like round the clock. Friday, you're there from like, depending on how much you have in the show, what you have in the show, you're there all day. And then Saturdays, you get there at 12 in the afternoon. And if you go to the after party, which is usually customary to do, you don't get home till like 6 a.m. Like, when I would tell people, like, and then you only get Sundays off, and that's for 3 weeks, and then you have 2 weeks off. Like, it is almost impossible to have a social life. Like, I would try to coordinate things with people or things, and people were like, oh, no worries, we can like meet for drinks like 9 if you're off late. And I'm like, no, off late for me is like 4 a.m. Like, it really is a job that is so fun, and you just accept that is going to be your life for however long it is your life. But like, even now, like, I woke up this morning at like 7 and I'm at the gym, and it's still weird for me when I'm like, why are so many people out right now? I'm like, oh, because other people go to work at like normal hours. It really twists your brain. I was once in like going to grab coffee before going to work for the day, like had just gotten up, showered, going to grab coffee. And I like walked past a Chipotle, and there was like so many people in Chipotle. And I was like, why are people in Chipotle in the morning? And then I looked at my clock, and it was like 4 p.m. And I was like, oh, your body is just like
totally altered.
Yeah, completely changed. It's crazy.
Now, you mentioned working on a couple of music videos.
Yeah.
I will say one of my girlfriend's favorite sketches is Big Boys.
Yeah.
Which you worked on. So now, does that go to, you pitch it to SZA? Do you pitch it to the host first? Like, how does it go around doing a music video centric,
Yes. That was one of the most fun things I've ever done in my life. So I worked on it with initially Punky Johnson, and then also Streeter Seidel, who's like SNL royalty. He's been there for like years. One of the genuinely greatest sketch writers, I think, on earth. And so Punky came to me on like a Tuesday at like, or maybe it had to be Monday, because you got to start music earlier. And she was like, we should do like a Christmas kind of song. And so I was telling her, we were talking about like just like different types of Christmas songs. And she, which is so funny because she's a lesbian, she came up with the idea about like, you just want like a big boy to snuggle up with in the winter time, which is really funny. And so she's a rapper. So she kind of like rapped. We both came up with the melody together and the hook together. And then, and so then basically you want the song to be kind of done before you pitch it to the host. Because the whole thing is like, you really want to get the host excited about doing what you want to do. So like, we had to get the whole song kind of done and in its infancy before we brought it to Kiki. So Kiki was the host. So we had to bring it to Kiki, and she was really excited about it, like off the jump, which was awesome. So we were like, cool, we're going to like, we came up with all this stuff, did all the stuff. And then for the table read, it went really, really well. She killed it. It got in the show. And then on, I think Thursday, we have to go like bring it to SZA and be like, hey, do you want to sing the hook? Because if not, it's gonna suck. No, but we had to like bring it to her and play it for her, and she was great. She also immediately was like, yeah, absolutely. Because the musical guests are really not there for very long. So like, if they're going to do something in your sketch or whatever, it's like an extra thing for them. So it's kind of like you have to get them excited to be like, also, and you're going to have to be here for like 8 more hours than you thought you were going to be. And she was really down for it, really excited. She was really great about like laying the vocals. She has an insane voice, which I already knew, but like, incredible voice. Yeah. And so then they were all on board for it. And then we had to do the music video. And the crazy part about doing a music video that I did not realize, and this is going to sound stupid, is it really is like doing an actual music video. Like they were like, what do you want for graphics? And like, background dancers, and we had to watch videos for background dancers and all the extras and like really lay vocals down and like listen to like the timing. Like it's like a real song. I just was down for the comedy of it all, and I was like, oh, we're doing like a legit music video. That's crazy. So yeah, it was insane.
So when the host and musical guest are like, we'll say like Justin Timberlake, where let's say he's doing both. Is it easier to pitch a music video idea because you already have to go film something, you know? Like the musical guest is added on.
100%. Then it's just like, on top of it, it's like, oh, this is also going to be another sketch you do. Yeah. But with music, it's a little bit hard because you kind of don't tell them until it's already rolling, and then you're like, please, want to do this?
And if they say no, it's either you move on without them or...
Yeah, you just move on without them. We would have had like somebody on cast sing it or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Now, you had mentioned Punky, and I noticed that, it seems you guys have a decent amount of relationship together.
Yeah, she's my favorite.
So, would you say that you could do an impression of her?
That's actually really funny. What would be my impression of Punky Johnson? It would be an impression that she doesn't do. Anytime I text her something, she goes, bitch, I'll kill. So that's my favorite thing. Not I'll kill you, just I'll kill. That's really funny. Oh, I love that. Punky is literally one of my best friends in the world. Like not even like a coworker, like a best friend in the world. She's awesome. I love her.
So so I would always imagine, as someone who wrote and then you have someone who was on, is it you guys go to grab coffee? Is it just nonstop, just back and forth, like just making each other
100%. I credit so much to Punky just because like she just made my time there so fun. It's a really great place, but it's also a very stressful place. And yeah, I literally genuinely mean I would not have made it at SNL without Punky Johnson. Like hands down.
Now, did you know her going in?
No, not at all.
So is that one thing where, on let's say your first season, you're writing a sketch and you pitch it to her? Like, what was that like moment where you're like, we're gonna cause trouble? Like when you had, like,
that is true. Because anytime we work together, it's truly like we wrote so many sketches together, and like 3 got on. Like that's how much. I remember one time we wrote a sketch that was probably not good and should never see the light of day, and we sent it to one of the supervising writers, and we just said like, "Does this feel racist?" And it was about black people, and he was black, and he goes, "It doesn't not feel racist." Because we just went so out of pocket, just like me and Punky. That's why me and Punky worked so well together and also not well together, because neither of us would rein each other in. And by the time we submitted sketches, it would just be like
what the
we
fuck
literally they would put them at the table, like the table read, but it was just like, this cannot go on television. Like this literally cannot be on television. It was crazy. But yeah, I don't even, actually I do remember one of the first sketches I wrote for Punky, which went so poorly. It was like she was playing Cinderella or the fairy godmother. Okay. I forget which one. It was going so bad that she changed the character in the middle of reading it live on table read, like started doing a completely different voice just to try and save it, which is the thing that I love the most about Punky. And I think about any great comedic performer is like, she will not give up on your sketch. Like sometimes things aren't going well and people kind of like phone it in.
Yeah.
Punky will see it through. Even if there is not a single laugh to be had, she will give it 1,000%. And that is what I really connected with her about.
Yeah, because, that's also the one thing I'd always be curious about. You're, writing all these sketches is, I feel like, do you get a sort of biasness where it's like, do you write extra sketches for them, or is it like, do you just try to be like, no, I need like a Colin Jost to appear, or like...
Oh, no, I think the best thing, and my tip for anybody who ever gets a job writing SNL, it's really like cast and writer dynamics. And so you eventually kind of figure out who you write best for, and you kind of just keep writing for that person. Like you, obviously there will be other people in the sketches, and like sometimes you'll be like, oh, I have a really good idea for Bowen. Let me actually text him about this, or I have a really good idea for Ego or whatever. But like, it really was like people, you know, if you ever hear from like any old cast members or writers, or like Mulaney, he'll always talk about writing with like Merica Sawyer and like Simon Rich, and like people really just, you find your people, and that's just comedy. You just find people who like your ideas really connect with them a lot, and then you just keep writing with them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I have another one, but I forgot. I wanted to mention this one.
Yeah.
So in your 3 seasons, you technically had 3 chances.
Yeah.
Did you ever meet Taylor Swift?
Oh, I had 3 chances, did I?
So she did a cameo on Pete Davidson and Ice Spice's episode.
Okay.
And then,
yes.
Yep. And then Travis came to host, and then she was a musical guest.
Yeah, you're right. That's crazy. Yes. So she was a musical guest when I was there, and that's kind of when I interacted with her, like the after party or whatever, because it was very she had the most star-studded, and I hate using that word, but that's the only way to describe it, the most star-studded after party. I literally went to go get a drink at the bar, and she was standing next to me, and then I turned to my left, and it was Joe Jonas and Sophie Turner, and then I turned around, and it was Cara Delevingne, and then I like kept walking, and it was like Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively, and I had to leave. I said, there's too many famous people. It just, I feel crazy. So yes, I did interact with her a little bit. When she came for she wasn't dating Travis when he was a host. They started dating right after.
Okay.
But he did come back to the show for somebody's episode to visit, and they both did cameos.
It was Pete Davidson's, because he appeared at the end of the NFL sketch.
Yes, 100%. And that happened like very randomly. But yeah, she wasn't dating Travis when he was hosting. And I know this specifically because I was trying to date Travis, and he was having none of that. I am just kidding. I was very professional. Could you imagine? I'm like, so I got kicked out that week.
So in this sketch, I actually appear.
Yes, and it's crazy because we're like in love. Yeah. We'll figure it out. No big deal.
So, and first of all, that is to imagine being in that lineup would
insane. It was wild.
Now, the most recent episode that aired was Mikey Madison and Morgan Wallen.
Yeah.
Now, there's a bit going around that during the credits, Morgan Wallen just kind of walked off stage.
Yeah.
As someone who went on the show, that has kind of blown up online and Twitter and everything. Do you find that to be, like, in your time there, is that a disrespectful move? Is it just, like, does he just not know? Because he's been on the show before.
Yeah. It's one of those things, I have no idea. Nobody's ever done that. So it's one of those things where you're like, I don't know if it's disrespectful because nobody's ever done it, really. I don't think. So I don't know. I would have to have been there to know what took place
or something.
Yeah, because I'm like, I don't think I've ever seen anyone do that. I low-key, from my outsider opinion, low-key, I feel like he literally just had to catch a plane. Like, I feel like he just was like, yeah, I said bye.
So that's
I don't know. He like walked at the camera too, which is so funny to me. Like, he could have gone off the side, and he was like, nah, I'm going to walk down the middle.
So that's the one that's
wild.
Like what I kind of picked up on.
Yeah.
If you watch the promos for that episode, he just looks very awkward. Like,
yeah, I think some people just like don't care. SNL is a very interesting thing that holds like a lot of weight and a lot of prestige for, I would say, many people. And then sometimes you get people who are just like, yeah, whatever.
Just use the promo.
Yeah, like literally, this is just another day in the life. And so I'm like, to me, it just felt like that vibe. He was just like, I don't know, I gotta go. And so he did.
Is it also true that the musical guests pay for anything they want during their performance?
Oh, I don't know. I have no idea about musical acts. I always felt bad whenever I had friends who were like big fans of the musical acts. We really didn't interact with them. Unless they did a sketch on the show or something like that, they were mostly there for like dress or like their rehearsal on Thursday and then kind of gone. So I have no idea. I have heard that myself and I don't know. Okay. I'm so sorry.
No, I mean, it's something I've always just been curious about. Also, I've been in 8H. I did like the SNL tour, which is like on part of like your time there. And,
yeah.
And it's a lot smaller and everything.
Oh yeah, it's very tiny. Actually, Now that I think about it, I don't know for sure that they pay for their own things, but I do think that that's probably correct because they used to just do standard setups until Kanye came the first time he did music, and he really did like a huge production and brought his own people and did a thing. And so now I think it's become customary for people to want to do that. So I think if you want to do like something insane or crazy, then yeah, it's on you. The show just does like a standard thing.
Okay.
Yeah, isn't that weird that Kanye was the one who changed it? It's fascinating.
You know, he's always making
But see,
moves.
again, yeah, that's another thing to like, some people just don't care. Everybody else was just like, we will do what you want. He came and he was like, nah, I'm going to make it crazy. Shout out to Kanye. Yeah. No, not shout out to cut that.
Oh, see, that's going to be the clip that comes
back. Play it with dramatic music. Dun, dun, dun. Yeah. What does Vannessa have to say?
Now, looking at, we pretty much have gone from like, you know, your beginning to your whole career and everything, you know, what would you say to someone who's looking to break into comedy writing, stand-up? Like, what is the advice you would give? My only advice, everybody always wants the like secret and the 5-step hack, which I would love. If anybody has one, hit a sister up. My advice that I always give to comedians, which always sounds very generic, but I think it's really true, is like, so much of comedy is word of mouth. Like, if you are doing good stuff, people will see you. I swear. And it sounds insane, but like, it's the only craft that you have to do live and in front of people. And yeah, I've gotten all my jobs really just through like opportunities and people telling people about me and being like, oh, she's really funny, or she's really good, or she's really solid. Like, yeah, if you are just out as much as you possibly can, doing good work, like doing good material, good jokes, like people will hear about you. It's really true. And it sounds crazy, but it's so true. And I'll do one more, and I know we have to wrap it up. Yeah. So was there a point in your career that you felt like whether it was Colbert, Lilly, SNL, that you felt like everything that like you thought this was going to be is like, this is exactly what you wanted? Or is there a part of it where you're like, this isn't what I was expecting? Oh, that's a great question. I think a little of both. I think in this industry and in this career, you can't really have like I'm going to only do this, or you got to kind of allow yourself to go. For me, my thing has always been, I love writing jokes and I love comedy. Mm-hmm. And in whatever way, shape, or form, like I love stand-up, and I really hope to, and I'm working towards, and I think it'll happen, being like a touring, headlining comic one day, right? But like, you have to allow yourself the opportunity to go like, yeah, but also I could also write a show and I would be just as happy, and I would also do this. Like, my baseline is that I love writing jokes, and so whatever allows me to do that, then I'm like, yeah, this is exactly what I thought. And there are things where it's like, oh, that's not how I thought, or this is different, or this is more fun, or this is less fun. But like, as long as I'm writing jokes, like that's truly it for me. Very nice. Yeah. Because I have absolutely like, I could say I look up to you, and it's like, I remember the first time we met at Broadway doing stand-up. Yeah. I remember, you were just, what I liked is your jokes, like, it's like had a punchline, and then you just, went more into it. But, like, you just build onto a story in such a creative way. Yeah. Where you can tell you've been doing this for a while. Yeah. And it's like watching, like, Picasso paint. Yeah. Oh, bless your soul. Thank you. That's going to be my new Instagram bio. It's like watching Picasso paint. That means a lot. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Thank you. And I appreciate you doing this. You have no idea how much this means. Yeah, this was so fun. Thank you. I was hyping this up for like all my friends and everything. You have no idea. This is awesome. So thank you so much. Thank you. Oh my God. I can't say it enough. Thank you. Absolutely. And thank you guys for watching. Oh, if you want to plug in social media, totally forgot. Oh, very Vannessa on everything. Vannessa with 2 N's, 2 S's. Gotcha. Thank you again. Yeah. Thank you. All good. Awesome. Cool. Thank you guys. This was genuinely so fun.